The evening sun cast long shadows through the tall windows of Bellini's restaurant as Lily wiped down another table. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and glanced at her watch. 6 more hours to go. Her feet already ached, but she couldn't afford to complain. Not when rent was due next week and her piano tuition payment loomed right after. Bellini's wasn't just any restaurant. With its crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and menu prices that made Lily wince, it catered to the city's elite. Business people closing deals, couples celebrating anniversaries with $100 bottles of wine, and the occasional celebrity hiding in the corner booth. Lily had learned to become almost invisible here, moving efficiently between tables with a practiced smile that revealed nothing about her exhaustion. Table 7's arrived, hissed Carlo, the floor manager, as he hurried past. Big spenders. VIP treatment. Lily nodded and straightened her crisp black uniform. VIP treatment meant extra attentiveness, perfect timing, and tolerating whatever attitude came her way. The good news, big spenders often meant decent tips, and she needed every dollar she could get. As she approached table 7, she took in the scene quickly. 5 people in expensive suits, 3 men and 2 women, already laughing too loudly for the restaurant's usually subdued atmosphere. Papers and tablets were scattered between them amid half-empty cocktail glasses. Some kind of business celebration, Lily guessed. "Good evening," she said, arranging water glasses in front of each person. "Welcome to Bellini's. My name is Lily, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." One of the men, silver-haired with a red tie that probably cost more than Lily's weekly grocery budget, barely glanced up. "We'll need another round. 2 martinis extra dry. 1 whiskey neat and—" He waved his hand at his companions. "Gin and tonic," said the woman to his right, not bothering to look at Lily either. "Same," added the second woman, at least making brief eye contact. Lily jotted down their orders. "Would you like to hear about our specials this evening?" "The chef has prepared—" "We know what we want," interrupted Red Tie, finally looking at her with the kind of dismissive glance that Lily had grown familiar with over the past year. "Bring the drinks first, then we'll order." "Of course, sir." Lily kept her voice pleasant and retreated toward the bar. Behind her, she heard one of them say, "Did you see the way Harrison's face dropped when we landed that account? Priceless," followed by more laughter. The drinks came quickly. Bellini's prided itself on efficiency, and Lily arranged them carefully on her tray. As she balanced it back to table 7, she noticed the group had grown even louder, drawing irritated looks from nearby diners enjoying their quiet meals. "Your drinks," she announced, placing each one precisely where it belonged. "Are you ready to order dinner, or would you like a few more minutes?" Red Tie waved the menu. "What's good here? And don't just say everything." His companions laughed as if he'd said something incredibly witty. Lily smiled patiently. "The sea bass is exceptional tonight. It's served with a champagne beurre blanc and seasonal vegetables. The lamb is also a house specialty." "Beurre what?" one of the other men said, smirking at his colleagues. "Beurre blanc," Lily repeated evenly. "It's a white butter sauce with shallots and white wine reduction." "Listen to her," the second woman said with a nudge to her colleague. "Fancy words for fancy food." The first woman leaned forward. "Can you pronounce the wine list too? Let's hear you say some of these." She pointed to the French section of the wine menu. Lily felt her cheeks warm slightly. Her French pronunciation wasn't perfect. She'd never had the chance to study abroad like some of her classmates at the conservatory. But she kept her composure. "I'd be happy to help with the wine selection," she said instead. "Our sommelier is also available if you'd prefer expert guidance." "Oh, we're just having a bit of fun," Red Tie said, waving his hand again. "Don't be so serious. Bring us 2 bottles of the Chateau Margaux." "You know which one?" Lily nodded. "The 2015 vintage, sir." "Excellent choice. At $600 a bottle." It was indeed a bit of fun for them, and represented nearly a week's worth of her wages. As she turned to place the wine order, she heard one of them mutter, "Wonder if she even knows what it tastes like," followed by more snickering. Lily kept walking, her face expressionless. In truth, she'd never tasted the Chateau Margaux. The staff occasionally got to sample some wines during training, but never the high-end bottles. What these customers didn't know, what most people who looked at her and saw just another server didn't know, was that Lily could identify Bach from Beethoven by the first 3 notes, could play Debussy's Clair de Lune with her eyes closed, and had once received a standing ovation at her conservatory's winter showcase. But none of that mattered here at Bellini's. Here, she was just a waitress in a black uniform who brought food and endured whatever treatment came her way. The evening progressed predictably. Their food orders were complicated: substitutions, special requests, questions about ingredients that seemed designed more to demonstrate their own knowledge than to gather information. Lily handled it all with practiced grace, even when one of them complained that his steak was overcooked, despite ordering it medium well. During the main course, Lily noticed the baby grand piano in the corner sitting empty. Usually Mr. Chen played soft classical music every evening from 6 to 10, creating the perfect backdrop for fine dining. Tonight his bench remained vacant. "Where's the piano guy?" one of the women at table 7 asked as Lily refilled her water glass. "Mr. Chen had a family emergency," Lily explained. "He called in just before his shift." Red Tie glanced at the piano. "That's disappointing. Part of what you pay for here is the atmosphere." He said it loudly enough that Carlo, passing nearby with a tray of desserts, winced slightly. "Perhaps tomorrow evening," Lily offered. Mr. Chen rarely misses a performance. The third man in the group, who had been quieter than his companions, looked up from his half-eaten sea base. "Anyone here play? They should let customers have a go if they're not providing the service." Red Tie's eyes lit up. "Now that's an idea." "Hey," he called to Carlo, "is that piano just for show tonight, or can someone play it?" Carlo hesitated, glancing toward the owner's office. "I suppose, if someone wanted to play something appropriate for the dining room, it would be permitted. You hear that?" Red Tie turned to his colleagues. "Who's taking piano lessons? Richard, didn't your kid just perform in some recital?" The quieter man shook his head. "That was 3 years ago, and it was the trumpet. I can't play a note." "I had lessons as a kid," offered one of the women, "but I hated every minute. Couldn't tell you a thing now." They continued around the table, each declining with varying degrees of amusement. Lily moved efficiently between their table and others in her section, clearing plates and bringing coffee as the conversation at table 7 shifted from business victories to childhood music lessons abandoned. "What about you, miss?" Red Tie suddenly asked as Lily set down a plate of tiramisu. "Our server here." "Do you play?" The question caught her off guard. She rarely shared details of her life outside Bellini's with customers. "I have some experience with the piano," she admitted carefully. The table erupted in exaggerated interest. Well. Red Tie leaned back in his chair. "Our server is full of surprises." "You should play something for us," said the second woman, gesturing toward the empty piano with her dessert fork. "I couldn't possibly," Lily said, feeling all their eyes on her. "I'm working." "Oh, come on," pushed Red Tie. "The regular guy isn't here. We've spent a fortune tonight. A little entertainment isn't too much to ask, is it?" Carlo appeared beside Lily, having overheard. "Is there a problem?" he asked quietly. "They're asking if I might play the piano," Lily explained, keeping her voice low. Carlo looked surprised. "I didn't know you played." He glanced at the increasingly rowdy table 7, then at the other diners who were beginning to look annoyed at the disruption. Then he seemed to make a calculation. "Perhaps just one piece?" he suggested. "It might help with the atmosphere." Lily recognized what he wasn't saying. Keep the big spenders happy, calm the dining room, and maybe salvage what was becoming a difficult evening for everyone. She looked back at table 7. They were watching her with expressions ranging from amusement to condescension. They expected her to refuse, or worse, to embarrass herself. They had already decided what kind of person she was based solely on her uniform and her job. Something shifted inside her. Maybe it was the long double shift. Maybe it was the weeks of practicing late into the night after exhausting days on her feet. Or maybe it was simply time to remind herself who she really was beyond these walls. "One piece," she agreed quietly. Red Tie's eyebrows shot up in surprise, and his companions exchanged glances that made it clear they expected entertainment, just not the kind they were about to receive. Lily walked toward the piano, aware of every eye in the restaurant following her. The chatter had dimmed to curious whispers. Even the kitchen staff had paused in the doorway, wondering what was happening. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she reached the glossy black baby grand. The instrument stood in a small corner alcove, specially designed to project sound throughout the dining room. Soft lighting created a warm glow around it, as if the piano itself was something magical, which to Lily it had always been. Behind her, Table 7 watched with varying expressions. Red Tie leaned back with his arms crossed, a smug smile playing at the corners of his mouth. One of the women whispered something to her colleague, and they both suppressed giggles. The quieter man simply observed, his face unreadable. Carlo hovered nearby, suddenly looking nervous about his decision. Perhaps just something pleasant, he murmured to Lily. Nothing too complicated. She nodded, knowing exactly what he meant. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't drive away customers. Don't make things worse. Play something simple that will quickly be forgotten. Lily adjusted the bench, taking her time. It felt different from the worn piano bench in her tiny apartment, or the practice room benches at school that had been sat on by thousands of students before her. This one was plush, perfectly maintained. Just like everything else at Bellini's. Come on. We haven't got all night, called Red Tie, earning a few laughs from his table. Lily took a deep breath and placed her hands on the keys. The coolness of the ivory beneath her fingertips was instantly familiar, a greeting from an old friend. She closed her eyes for just a moment, letting the noise of the restaurant fade away. Then she began to play. She started with something gentle, the opening notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune. Not the most original choice, perhaps, but one that would ease the dining room into what was happening. The first delicate notes floated through the restaurant, and Lily felt rather than saw the shift in the atmosphere. The murmurs quieted. Forks paused midway to mouths. Even the kitchen sounds seemed to soften. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, finding each key without hesitation. The piece began slowly, dreamily, building gradually with each phrase. Lily allowed herself to sink into the music, letting her body sway slightly with the gentle rhythm. At Table 7, the smirks had frozen on their faces. The red-tied man had straightened in his chair, his glass of expensive wine forgotten in his hand. The women had stopped whispering. The quieter man was leaning forward now, his eyes fixed on Lily's hands as they danced across the keyboard. As the piece progressed, growing more complex, Lily added subtle variations that weren't in the original score, her own interpretation that her professor had once praised as showing remarkable sensitivity. The final notes hung in the air like crystal, and for a moment after she finished, the restaurant remained completely silent. Then came the applause, scattered at first, then growing. Genuine applause, not the polite kind reserved for background musicians. Lily looked up, momentarily startled by the reaction. She'd been so absorbed in the music that she'd nearly forgotten where she was. An older couple at a nearby table was beaming at her. A woman dining alone raised her wine glass in a small salute. Even the kitchen staff, still lingering in the doorway, were clapping. Carlo looked stunned but pleased, already calculating how this unexpected development might benefit the evening's atmosphere. Perhaps one more, he suggested quietly. Lily glanced at Table 7. They weren't applauding. Instead, they stared at her with expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief. Red Tie's mouth had actually fallen open slightly. The quieter man simply nodded at her, a gesture that somehow conveyed more respect than any applause could have. Something shifted in Lily at that moment. After months, years really, of being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed, she felt a surge of confidence that had nothing to do with pride and everything to do with finally being seen. Here, in this unexpected moment, she wasn't just Lily the waitress. She was Lily the musician, Lily the artist. She turned back to the piano and this time chose something with more complexity, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. From the first intricate run of notes, she knew she had the room. This wasn't background music anymore. This was a performance. Her fingers flew across the keys with practiced agility, bringing out the piece's passionate melodies and haunting harmonies. More diners put down their forks. Conversation stopped completely. Even the busboys paused in their work, standing at the edges of the dining room with empty trays in their hands. At Table 7, the group had gone completely still. One of the women had closed her eyes, actually listening. The quiet man was watching Lily's hands with intense focus, following every movement. Red Tie's expression had transformed entirely, the smug smile replaced by something that looked almost like regret. As Lily played, memories flooded through her, hours of practice until her fingers cramped, the scholarship that had given her a chance at the conservatory, her mother's sacrifices to get her first piano lessons, all the doubts and struggles, all the times she'd wondered if she should just give up, if working these double shifts was worth it, if the dream was too big for someone like her. The piece grew more intense, and Lily leaned into the emotion of it, letting the music speak through her. When she reached the final notes, there was no hesitation in her playing, only certainty and grace. This time the applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Someone even called out "Bravo" from across the room. Carlo was beaming now, all his earlier hesitation gone. The owner of Bellini's, Mr. Rossi, had emerged from his office at the back, drawn by the unusual energy in his restaurant. "What's happening?" he asked Carlo, gesturing toward the piano. "It's Lily, sir. She works here. She's been playing and—" "I can see that," Mr. Rossi interrupted, his eyes fixed on Lily. "What I want to know is why I'm just hearing about this now." At table 7, a transformation had occurred. The group that had been so dismissive of Lily now sat in uncomfortable silence, avoiding each other's eyes. The woman who had challenged Lily to pronounce the wine list was staring into her coffee cup. The man who had complained about his steak was fidgeting with his napkin. Only the quiet man seemed at ease, watching the scene with thoughtful eyes. Red Tie cleared his throat. "Another round," he called to no one in particular, his voice lacking its earlier arrogance. Lily stood from the piano, momentarily unsure what to do. The applause continued, with several diners smiling warmly at her. She gave a small, awkward bow, unaccustomed to this kind of attention in the restaurant where she usually moved invisibly between tables. Mr. Rossi approached her, extending his hand. "I had no idea we had such talent on staff," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Would you play another?" Lily glanced at her section. Her other tables needed attention. Orders needed to be taken. Bills needed to be delivered. As if reading her mind, Carlo stepped forward. "I'll cover her section," he offered. "Just for a few more pieces." Mr. Rossi nodded approvingly. "Excellent idea." Lily hesitated, then looked directly at table 7. They had wanted entertainment, after all, just not the kind they'd expected. Red Tie met her gaze briefly, then looked away. "I'd be happy to play a few more pieces," she said, addressing Mr. Rossi, but loud enough for table 7 to hear. "Any requests?" An elderly man at a corner table called out, "Do you know any Gershwin?" Lily smiled. "I do." As she settled back onto the bench, she felt a strange mixture of emotions. Satisfaction, yes, but also a kind of peace. For this moment at least, her two worlds had collided in the most unexpected way. The restaurant where she worked to pay her bills had become a venue for the music she loved. She launched into Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, her fingers finding the jazzy rhythms and bold chords with easy confidence. The piece was challenging, showcasing both classical technique and jazz improvisation. Exactly the kind of music that demonstrated the range of her abilities. As she played, she noticed movement from table 7. The quiet man had taken out his phone and was recording her performance. One of the women was searching for something on her own phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. Red Tie sat motionless, watching Lily with an expression she couldn't quite read. Perhaps regret, perhaps embarrassment, perhaps simply amazement. Whatever his thoughts, one thing was clear. He no longer saw her as just a waitress. The restaurant had transformed into an impromptu concert hall with Lily at the center. For the first time since she'd started working at Bellini's, she felt truly visible. Not as someone bringing food or taking orders or enduring casual rudeness, but as herself, a musician with passion and skill who happened to wear a server's uniform. As the piece reached its famous crescendo, Lily poured everything she had into the music. Whatever happened after tonight, whether she went back to being invisible tomorrow or whether something had permanently changed, she would have this moment. This unexpected triumph that had begun with a challenge meant to embarrass her and had instead revealed her true self to a room full of strangers, and to table 7 most of all. The final notes of Rhapsody in Blue faded into applause that filled Bellini's restaurant. Lily's cheeks flushed with a mixture of exhilaration and shyness as she stood to acknowledge the response. Diners who had come for a quiet meal had unexpectedly found themselves at a remarkable performance, and their appreciation was genuine. Mr. Rossi, the owner, approached the piano with a warm smile that transformed his usually serious face. He was a short, stocky man with salt and pepper hair who rarely interacted with the regular staff, spending most of his time in his office or entertaining important guests. "Magnificent," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Truly magnificent. I've had professional pianists here who couldn't play with half your feeling." Lily struggled to find the right words. "Thank you, Mr. Rossi. I should probably get back to my tables, though." Mr. Rossi waved his hand dismissively. "Carlo has it covered. Please, one more piece before you go." She glanced toward her section. Carlo was efficiently moving between her tables, taking orders and delivering checks. He caught her eye and gave an encouraging nod. "All right, one more," she agreed, settling back onto the bench. For her final piece, Lily chose something that truly showcased her abilities. Liszt's La Campanella, one of the most technically challenging piano pieces ever written. As her fingers flew across the keys with impossible speed and precision, executing the piece's famous leaps and trills, the room fell into a stunned silence. Table 7 sat frozen. The woman who had mocked Lily's pronunciation was recording the performance on her phone, her expression one of complete astonishment. Red Tie had abandoned all pretense of disinterest and was openly staring, his mouth slightly agape. The quieter man watched with intense focus, occasionally glancing at his colleagues as if gauging their reactions. When Lily finished, there was a moment of silence, that precious second when an audience is so moved they forget to applaud, before the restaurant erupted in the loudest response yet. Several people stood. An older gentleman near the window whistled appreciatively. Even the kitchen staff who had gathered at the service entrance were clapping enthusiastically. Lily stood and gave a proper bow this time, allowing herself to fully embrace the moment. As she turned to leave the piano, she saw a woman approaching from across the restaurant. She wore an elegant black dress and carried herself with quiet confidence. Lily recognized her as a regular customer who usually dined alone on Thursday evenings. "Excuse me," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'm Alexandra Bennett." Lily shook her hand. "Lily Chen," she replied automatically, still slightly dazed from the performance and the reception. "Ms. Chen, I don't usually do this so informally, but I couldn't wait. I'm the director of the Riverside Arts Foundation." She handed Lily a business card embossed with a simple logo of a flowing river. "We fund musical education and performance opportunities throughout the city." Lily looked at the card, then back at Alexandra, barely processing what was happening. "Your performance was extraordinary," Alexandra continued. "We have a scholarship program for emerging artists, and I'd very much like you to audition. It includes performance opportunities at our concert series and mentorship with established musicians." Lily's heart raced. The Riverside Arts Foundation was well known in musical circles, prestigious but also selective. Students from her conservatory dreamed of their scholarships and performance slots. I don't know what to say," Lily stammered. Alexandra smiled warmly. "You don't need to decide now. Call me next week and we can arrange the details." She glanced around the restaurant. "Though I must say, you've already given quite an audition tonight." As Alexandra returned to her table, Mr. Rossi reappeared at Lily's side. He had been watching the interaction with interest. "An opportunity?" he asked. Lily nodded, still holding the business card like it might disappear if she loosened her grip. "She wants me to audition for a scholarship program." Mr. Rossi's face broke into a broad smile. "Excellent. But before you become too famous to remember us," he hesitated, choosing his words carefully, "how would you feel about playing here regularly? Not as a server, but as our pianist. Friday and Saturday evenings. We would pay you properly, of course." The offer struck Lily like a physical force. Playing professionally, even at a restaurant, had been her goal for years. It would mean fewer hours, better pay, and most importantly, making music rather than carrying plates. "What about my serving position?" she asked. "Keep it for other nights if you wish, or let it go entirely. Your choice." He named a figure for 2 evenings of playing that was triple what she made in a full shift of serving. "You have remarkable talent, Lily. It would be my honor to have you perform here." As they spoke, Lily noticed the quiet man from table 7 approaching. Up close, she could see he was younger than his colleagues, perhaps in his early 30s with thoughtful eyes behind stylish glasses. "Excuse me." he said politely. I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to apologize for my colleague's behavior earlier. He glanced back at his table, where the rest of the group was settling their bill, pointedly not looking in Lily's direction. It was disrespectful, and I'm sorry I didn't say something at the time. Lily was surprised by the gesture. Thank you, she said simply. I'm David, by the way. He handed her a business card of his own. I work in arts administration for the symphony orchestra. Mr. Rossi, sensing a potential opportunity, excused himself discreetly, leaving Lily and David to talk. Your playing is exceptional, David continued, particularly the list. Are you studying somewhere currently? Final year at the City Conservatory, Lily replied, finding her voice again. Piano performance major, David nodded, unsurprised. I thought so. The technique was too polished for self-teaching. He hesitated. This may seem forward, but we have an opening for a pianist in our community outreach program. It involves playing for school groups, community centers, retirement homes, bringing classical music to people who might not otherwise experience it. Lily blinked, trying to process this second opportunity appearing out of nowhere. That sounds wonderful, but it's part-time, David added quickly. Designed to work around a student's schedule, and it pays reasonably well. He smiled slightly. Better than waiting tables, I imagine. Why are you doing this? Lily asked. You don't know me. David considered her question. Let's just say I recognize talent when I see it. And perhaps I'm trying to make amends for not speaking up earlier. His expression grew more serious. My colleagues and I came here directly from closing a major deal. They were feeling entitled. But that's no excuse for how they treated you. Before Lily could respond, Carlo approached with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to get back to my own section. Your tables are asking for their server. Reality came crashing back. Despite everything that had happened in the last 30 minutes, Lily still had a job to do. Bills to deliver, orders to take, tables to clear. I need to get back to work, she told David. But thank you. I'll call about the position, I promise. David nodded. Please do, and... He glanced back at his table where Red Tie was impatiently waving for the check. I should get back as well. It seems I'm picking up the tab tonight. As David returned to table 7, Lily slipped both business cards into her pocket and headed back to her section. The dining room had returned mostly to normal, though several people nodded or smiled at her as she passed. A few even said beautiful playing or wonderful performance as she delivered their checks. When she reached table 7, she found the atmosphere completely transformed. The earlier arrogance had evaporated, replaced by awkward silence and avoided gazes. Your check, she said professionally, placing the leather folder on the table. Red Tie cleared his throat. Thank you, he said stiffly, the first time he'd thanked her all evening. The others mumbled similar sentiments except David, who met her eyes with a genuine smile. After they left, leaving a tip that was surprisingly generous, Lily continued with her shift. The restaurant gradually emptied as the night wore on. By closing time, she was exhausted but buzzing with an energy that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. As she helped wipe down tables, Carlo approached her. So, he said, quite a night. Lily laughed softly. You could say that. Mr. Rossi told me about the pianist offer. Are you going to take it? She thought about the 2 business cards in her pocket, about the faces of the diners as she played, about the years of practice that had led to this unexpected moment. I think I am, she said, but I'll keep some serving shifts too, at least for now. She smiled, just in case any other tables want to challenge the waitress. Carlo shook his head. You know, I've worked with you for almost a year, and I had no idea you could play like that. Most people don't look past the uniform, Lily said without bitterness. Just stating a fact. Well, they will now. Word's going to spread about tonight. You watch. Carlo picked up a stack of clean napkins. You know what the best part was? The looks on those suits' faces when they realized who they'd been talking down to. He grinned, especially that Red Tie guy. As Lily finished her closing duties and changed out of her uniform, she felt different somehow, as if the restaurant's baby grand had unlocked something in her that had been dormant for too long. Tomorrow she would call the numbers on those business cards. Tomorrow she would begin a new chapter. But tonight, as she stepped out into the cool evening air, she allowed herself to simply savor the moment when everything had changed. When a table of executives had smirked at a waitress, not knowing they were about to witness something extraordinary, not knowing that the person they had dismissed would be the one they remembered long after the expensive wine and fancy food were forgotten. 3 weeks had passed since the night Lily's life had changed at Bellini's restaurant. The memory still felt fresh, the faces of the diners as she played, the shocked expressions of Table 7 and the business cards that had burned like possibilities in her pocket. Tonight, Lily sat in a small dressing room backstage at the Riverside Concert Hall, staring at her reflection in a brightly lit mirror. Her black concert dress, borrowed from a classmate, hung elegantly on her frame. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple but elegant style, but it was her eyes that caught her attention, wide with a mixture of excitement and terror. A gentle knock at the door broke her trance. 5 minutes. Ms. Chen called a stagehand. Thank you, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Lily took a deep breath and reached for her phone, scrolling through the messages that had accumulated throughout the day. Good luck wishes from her mother, her conservatory friends, her piano professor, and even Carlo and the kitchen staff at Bellini's. She smiled at the last one, a group photo of them all giving thumbs up, taken in front of the restaurant's baby grand. Her thumb hovered over one more message. You'll be brilliant tonight. Remember, they already want you to succeed. David. In the weeks since that fateful evening, Lily's world had transformed at dizzying speed. The very next day, she had called Alexandra Bennett at the Riverside Arts Foundation. Within a week, she'd auditioned and been awarded not just a scholarship, but also a spot in their prestigious Young Artists Showcase, which was why she now sat backstage at one of the city's most respected concert venues, about to perform for an audience of arts patrons, critics, and music lovers. She had also accepted Mr. Rossi's offer to become Bellini's weekend pianist. Her first official performance had drawn a surprisingly large crowd, many of whom had heard about the waitress who played like a concert pianist. The restaurant had been booked, solid for weeks now on Friday and Saturday nights. As for David's offer with the Symphony Orchestra's community outreach program, she had interviewed the previous week and was waiting to hear back. David himself had become something of a friend, checking in occasionally with advice and encouragement. The stagehand knocked again. 2 minutes, Ms. Chen. Lily stood, smoothed her dress, and took one last look in the mirror. The waitress who had endured dismissive comments and condescending smirks was still there, but something else had joined her, a confidence that came from finally being recognized for her true gifts. She stepped out of the dressing room into the shadowy backstage area. Through a gap in the curtains, she could see the concert hall filling with people in formal attire. Her stomach tightened at the sight. Alexandra appeared beside her, elegant in a midnight blue gown. Nervous? She asked kindly. Terrified, Lily admitted. Alexandra smiled. Good, the best performers always are. It means you care. She touched Lily's arm reassuringly. Remember, these people are here because they love music. They want to be moved, to feel something. That's all. Lily nodded, thinking of all the hours she'd spent preparing, practicing in the conservatory's rooms until security asked her to leave, refining her program with her professor's guidance, even playing pieces for Bellini's diners as a form of rehearsal. The important thing, Alexandra continued, is to play with the same heart you showed that night at the restaurant. Technical precision is wonderful, but it's your emotional connection to the music that makes you special, Lily. Before Lily could respond, the house lights dimmed, and a polite hush fell over the audience. Alexandra squeezed her arm once more before walking on stage to introduce the evening's program. Welcome to the Riverside Arts Foundation's Young Artists Showcase. Alexandra's voice rang out clearly through the hall. We begin tonight with a performer of extraordinary sensitivity and passion. Though she is still completing her studies at our city's conservatory, her musicianship speaks of a maturity beyond her years. Please welcome Lily Chen. The audience applauded as Lily walked on stage, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure the front row must hear it. She approached the gleaming concert grand piano, far larger and more impressive than Bellini's baby grand, and took a moment to adjust the bench. As she settled her hands above the keys, Lily scanned the audience briefly. In the third row, she spotted Mr. Rossi and Carlo, both looking somewhat uncomfortable in formal attire but beaming with pride. Several rows back, David sat with an older couple she assumed were his parents, and scattered throughout were faces she recognized from the restaurant, regular customers who had heard about her performance and come to support her. But what caught her attention most was a familiar group seated together near the center, table 7. Red Tie sat stiffly in his tuxedo, flanked by his colleagues from that night. They looked different somehow, smaller, less intimidating. The woman who had mocked her wine pronunciation caught her eye and gave a small, almost apologetic nod. Lily turned back to the piano. Tonight's program began with Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor, a piece that told a story through its music, beginning gently before building to a passionate, technically demanding conclusion. Fitting, she thought, for her own journey. She took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes rang out clear and true in the perfect acoustics of the hall. As Lily moved deeper into the piece, the audience and the hall itself seemed to fade away, leaving only her and the music, a conversation between artist and composer across centuries. Her fingers danced across the keyboard with growing confidence, finding the delicate balance between technical precision and emotional expression. When she reached the thundering climax of the piece, she felt rather than heard the audience's collective intake of breath. As the final notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence, that magical pause when a performance has truly touched listeners, before the applause began. It swelled quickly, filling the concert hall with appreciation. Lily stood to acknowledge the audience, her eyes bright with emotion. As she bowed, she caught sight of table 7 again. Red Tie was applauding with genuine enthusiasm, all his former condescension replaced by what looked like respect. For the next 40 minutes, Lily performed her carefully selected program, moving from Chopin to Debussy to Rachmaninoff. Each piece showcased different aspects of her playing, from delicate lyricism to technical brilliance. By the time she reached her final piece, the same Liszt La Campanella that had stunned the diners at Bellini's, she was no longer playing for the audience but with them, sharing in the joy of music that had sustained her through years of late nights, double shifts and moments of doubt. When she finished, the audience rose to their feet. The applause was thunderous, accompanied by cheers and bravos from throughout the hall. Someone threw a single rose onto the stage. Lily picked it up, deeply moved, and curtsied once more before leaving the stage. Backstage, she was immediately surrounded by well-wishers, Alexandra, her piano professor who had slipped backstage, and several other young performers from the showcase waiting for their turns to play. "Magnificent," Alexandra said, embracing her warmly. "Absolutely magnificent. You've made us all proud," her professor added. His usually critical face softened with genuine approval. Lily thanked them both, still catching her breath from the performance and the emotional release that came with it. As the next performer took the stage, she retreated to her dressing room to collect herself before the reception that would follow the showcase. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting Alexandra or perhaps her professor again instead. The door opened to reveal the complete group from table 7, looking surprisingly humble. Red Tie, whose name she had learned from David was actually Thomas, stepped forward awkwardly. "Ms. Chen," he began formally, "we wanted to congratulate you on an outstanding performance." "Thank you," Lily replied, unsure what else to say. The woman who had challenged her about the wine pronunciation stepped forward next. "We also wanted to apologize properly. Our behavior that night at the restaurant was inexcusable." Lily studied their faces. Their regret seemed genuine. "I appreciate that." Thomas cleared his throat. "The truth is, we've been talking a lot about that night. About assumptions and, well, arrogance." He glanced at his colleagues before continuing. "You taught us something important, something we needed to learn." David, standing at the back of the group, caught Lily's eye and gave her a small smile of encouragement. "It's why we came tonight," Thomas continued. "Not just to hear you play, though that was extraordinary, but to show our respect." One of the other executives stepped forward, holding an envelope. "We've established a scholarship fund through our company's foundation for working musicians, people with talent who are juggling jobs to make ends meet while pursuing their art." She handed Lily the envelope. "We'd be honored if you would be its first recipient." Lily took the envelope, momentarily speechless. "It's not charity," Thomas added quickly, misreading her silence. "It's recognition, and perhaps a form of atonement." Lily found her voice. "Thank you. This has Incredibly generous. It's the least we could do, the woman said softly. After all, you changed our perspective that night. Not many people can say they've done that. As they filed out, David lingered behind. I told you you'd be brilliant, he said with a warm smile. I still can't believe all of this is happening, Lily admitted. Believe it, he replied. By the way, the symphony board approved your position yesterday. I was going to call tomorrow, but, he shrugged. Seems like the perfect time to tell you in person. Another knock at the door announced Alexandra's return. Lily, the critics are asking to meet you at the reception. And there's a representative from Capitol Records who's very interested in talking to you. Lily looked between them, a slow smile spreading across her face. 3 weeks ago, she had been just another struggling student working double shifts to pay rent and tuition. Now, standing in a concert dress with applause still ringing in her ears, she realized that everything had changed, all because a table of executives had smirked at the wrong waitress. 1 year later, Lily stood in the wings of the Grand Symphony Hall, breathing deeply as she listened to the orchestra tuning up. The familiar sounds, violins adjusting their A string, the oboe giving the reference note, the gentle tapping of the timpani, calmed her racing heart. She smoothed the skirt of her emerald green gown, not borrowed this time, but her own. So much had changed in a year. Sometimes she still couldn't believe the path her life had taken, all because of that one night at Bellini's restaurant when she'd accepted a challenge meant to humiliate her. 5 minutes. Ms. Chen, the stage manager whispered, clipboard in hand. Lily nodded, peering through the curtain at the packed concert hall. Tonight was no ordinary performance. It was the symphony's annual benefit gala, raising money for their community outreach programs. The same program she'd been working with for the past year, bringing music to schools and community centers throughout the city. What made tonight special wasn't just the prestigious venue or the sold-out crowd. It was the fact that Lily wasn't merely performing. She had helped create tonight's unique program, titled Breaking Barriers: New Voices in Classical Music. The evening featured compositions by women and people of color, alongside traditional classics, performed by artists from diverse backgrounds. And Lily would be the soloist for Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, a dream she'd hardly dared to imagine a year ago when she was still serving tables and practicing in empty classrooms whenever she could find them. A hand touched her shoulder gently. She turned to find David, handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes bright with excitement and pride. Ready? He asked. Their relationship had evolved in unexpected ways over the past year. What had begun as professional friendship, David mentoring her in her role with the symphony's outreach program, had gradually deepened into something more. They had spent countless hours together planning school visits, discussing music education, and eventually sharing dinners that had nothing to do with work. As ready as I'll ever be, she replied with a nervous smile. Is everyone here? David nodded. Front row center. Your mom, your professor, Alexandra, Carlo, and Mr. Rossi, even table 7. Lily laughed at the nickname that had stuck. Thomas and his colleagues, now known to her by their actual names, had become unexpected supporters of her career. The scholarship fund they had established had grown to support 5 working musicians, and they regularly attended her performances. And the kids? She asked. All 40 students from Eastside Middle School are in the balcony, just where they can see your hands on the piano. This was perhaps what made Lily proudest. The students from her outreach program were attending their first symphony concert, courtesy of tickets purchased by the Riverside Arts Foundation. Many of them came from neighborhoods where classical music was considered distant and inaccessible. Lily had spent months working with them, showing them that music belonged to everyone. The concertmaster appeared beside them. It's time, he said with a supportive nod. Lily took one more deep breath and walked onto the stage. The applause was immediate and enthusiastic. As she crossed to the gleaming grand piano at the center of the stage, she caught sight of familiar faces in the front row. Her mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Mr. Rossi and Carlo beamed with unmistakable pride. Her professor nodded approvingly, and Alexandra, elegant as always, gave her a subtle thumbs up. Behind them sat Thomas and his colleagues, no longer the intimidating group from table 7, but people she now knew as individuals. People who had learned something important from their encounter with her, just as she had. Lily took her seat at the piano as the conductor stepped onto the podium. The applause faded to expectant silence. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling the cool ivory beneath her fingers, that familiar sensation that still connected her to her very first piano lessons as a child. The conductor raised his baton. The orchestra began the dark, pulsing introduction to the Rachmaninoff Concerto. When Lily entered with those famous opening chords, powerful, resonant, commanding, she thought of how far she had come from the girl who washed dishes in a small cafe to pay for piano lessons, from the student who practiced before dawn because she couldn't afford her own piano, from the waitress who endured condescension with a professional smile, to this moment, this stage, this music. As the first movement progressed, Lily lost herself in the emotional landscape of the concerto, its sweeping melodies, its technical challenges, its moments of tender vulnerability. She and the orchestra moved as one organism, breathing together, feeling together. When the movement ended, there was a brief, appreciative applause, unusual between movements of a concerto, but a sign that the audience was truly engaged. Lily caught sight of the students in the balcony, leaning forward in their seats, completely absorbed. The second movement began with its famous flute solo, joined by the clarinet. When Lily entered with the piano's gentle theme, she thought of all those who had helped her reach this point. Her mother, who had worked extra shifts to pay for her first lessons. Her professor, who had recognized her talent and recommended her for a scholarship. Carlo, who had encouraged her to play that night at Bellini's. Alexandra, who had seen her potential. David, who had believed in her from the start. Even Table 7, who had inadvertently set everything in motion. The final movement arrived with its driving energy and technical fireworks. Lily's fingers flew across the keyboard with confidence and precision, yet never losing the emotional core that made her playing special. As the concerto built toward its triumphant conclusion, she felt a surge of pure joy, the satisfaction of being exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was born to do. The final chords resounded through the hall, and Lily lifted her hands from the keyboard as the orchestra delivered the last powerful notes. There was a moment of breathless silence before the audience erupted in a standing ovation. Lily stood to acknowledge them, a wave of emotion washing over her. She could see the students in the balcony on their feet, cheering wildly. Her mother was openly crying now. Thomas and his colleagues were applauding enthusiastically, all traces of their former arrogance long gone. The conductor motioned for the orchestra to stand, then extended his hand to Lily. She curtsied to the audience, to the orchestra, and to the conductor before leaving the stage, the applause still thundering behind her. In the wings, David waited with a bouquet of wildflowers, her favorite, not the traditional roses. His eyes shone with what looked suspiciously like tears. That was... He shook his head, apparently unable to find adequate words. I've never heard it played with such heart. Before she could respond, she was surrounded by well-wishers, orchestra members, staff, board members. Alexandra appeared, embracing her warmly. You've exceeded all our expectations, Lily, she said, and we had very high expectations. After the crowd thinned, Lily found a quiet moment with David in a small backstage sitting room. I can't believe how much has happened in just 1 year, she said, still holding the wildflowers. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd refused to play that night at Bellini's. David considered this. Someone with your talent would have found their way eventually. But I'm glad it happened when it did. He smiled. Otherwise, who knows if our paths would have crossed. There was a knock at the door. The stage manager poked his head in. Ms. Chen, the students from East Side are hoping to meet you. They're waiting in the education room. Lily's face lit up. Of course. I'll be right there. As they walked toward the education room, David asked, Will you still play at Bellini's this weekend, even after tonight's triumph? Lily nodded without hesitation. Absolutely. Mr. Rossi gave me my first real chance. Besides, she added with a smile, I like keeping one foot in that world. It reminds me where I came from. They reached the education room and paused outside. Through the window in the door, Lily could see 40 excited middle school students, many from neighborhoods where opportunities were limited, all buzzing with the experience of their first symphony concert. You know, David said softly, what you're doing with these kids might end up being even more important than your performances. Lily squeezed his hand. Music changed my life. Now I get to show them it can change theirs too. As she pushed open the door to a chorus of excited greetings, Lily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a waitress carrying plates to a pianist commanding standing ovations. From being invisible to being seen, truly seen, for who she was and what she could do. The students crowded around her, full of questions and observations about the concert. One girl, shy but determined, asked, "Ms. Chen, is it true you used to be a waitress?" "My mom is a waitress and she's trying to go back to school." Lily knelt to meet the girl at eye level. "Yes, it's true. For years I served tables while studying music. Please tell your mom something for me." She glanced up at David, then back to the girl. "Tell her that sometimes people will only see the uniform, but that doesn't define who you are or what you can become." As the girl smiled, Lily realized this was perhaps her most important performance yet. Not on the grand stage, but here in this simple education room, showing these children that dreams didn't have to remain dreams, that sometimes all it took was the courage to sit down at the piano when others expected you to fail. Sometimes all it took was the willingness to show the world who you truly were, even when they were smirking at the waitress.